the abundance of evidence on my uncle's death, the CIA was involved, I think is beyond any dispute. If I were a prosecutor, I feel I could win that case without doing any further discovery, just because with my father, I always assumed that Sirhan killed my father. Sirhan confessed to the crime, confessed to killing him. There were 77 eyewitnesses in the room. And, and so I didn't think there was any question. And then a guy called Paul Schrade, who was one of my father's close friends, he was a deputy director of the United Auto Workers. He had recruited Cesar Chavez into the labor movement. He was standing next to my father the night that my father was killed, and he took the first bullet. So he got shot in the head by Sirhan. Sirhan was waiting at a steam table, and my father was brought through the kitchen where he was not scheduled to go. And Sirhan fired 2 shots at my father. The first one hit Paul Schrade in the head. The second one hit a door jamb behind my father, the wooden frame of the door. The LAPD later took it out of that, removed it. Then he was grabbed by 6 men, including Rayford Johnson, who was the 1960 decathlon champion, one of my father's best friends, Rosie Greer, who was part of the fearsome foursome, and 3 other guys, or 4 other guys. They pinned him against the steam table, and they took his gun hand and they pushed it away from my father, pointing the opposite way. Mm-hmm. But Rayford Johnson later told me he was trying to pry the gun out of Sirhan's hand. Sirhan's this little guy. When I met him in prison, the first thing that impressed me is how tiny and frail he looked. But Rayford Johnson said that he had superhuman strength. And he then fired off 6 more shots and emptied the chamber, but exactly the opposite direction of my father. And all of those shots hit people. So we know what happened to every bullet in his gun. He was always in front of my father and never got behind him. But the bullets that killed my father, according to Thomas Noguchi's autopsy report, Thomas Noguchi was the most important coroner in American history, and my father's autopsy is called the perfect autopsy. Because Noguchi knew that what had happened in Dallas with my uncle, where the autopsy was completely botched. And so he wanted to make sure nobody, to avoid all that criticism. So he flew in the chief coroner of all the armed service, every branch of the armed service, and a lot of other famous coroners, and they all sat in the theater and watched him perform the autopsy. And what his autopsy found is my father was shot 4 times from behind, never from in front. The shots, one of the shots passed harmlessly through his shoulder pad. The other 3, 2 lodged in his back. The other one was right behind his ear. And that in each case, they were contact shots, meaning the barrel of the gun was touching his skin or half an inch from it. And they left carbon tattoos. And they all had an upward angle, so that whoever was doing it was standing behind my father and holding the gun, not directly at him like that, but at an angle where you could keep him closer.
So it was almost like...
And the guy who was in that position is a guy called Eugene Thane Cesar, and he was a security guard who was hired 2 days before. When my father's schedule was already known.
So now he's walking through this kitchen, which he shouldn't be walking through. He's got this
security guy. He grabbed the security guard, is the guy who steered him into the ambush.
That's what I'm saying.
He had my father's elbow, and he was directing him. And then, Sirhan starts firing. My father then falls back, and he lands on Cesar. And...
Wait, Eugene is, what's his last name?
Eugene Thane Cesar.
Thane Cesar.
Thane,
Thane Cesar, yeah.
And my father must have known he was being shot from behind, because the last thing he did is rotate and turn and pull off the clip-on tie that Cesar had on.
Wow. Get the fuck out.
You see the original early pictures before my mother took that out and put a rosary in his hand. But he has that tie in his hand, and there's pictures of Cesar from that night that don't have a tie on. Cesar was was seen by all the eyewitnesses with his gun drawn. When he pushed my father off, he had his gun drawn. He was asked by the police, why did you have your gun drawn? And he said, I was shooting at Sirhan, but there's no evidence of that. And then he was caught in multiple lies about what he did with the gun. That the police did not take the gun from him that night. He was
there was a gun that was fired at the scene, and the police
the police did not take it. And they, the police also destroyed all the photos before trial. They collected every photo taken in that room, 2,200 photos, and destroyed them all.
Who hired Eugene? You said
he was
the last
hired by a company called A Security, but he had a real job. His real job was at the Boeing plant, and he had a high security clearance. He was allowed in the top secret parts of the plant. Before that, he had worked for Hughes Engineering, which, Howard Hughes was very much, people, a guy, Robert Mayhew, who is his deputy, was deeply involved in the JFK assassination. Now, here's what happens next. A guy shows up as Sirhan's lawyer. It's an attorney who is at that point involved in the Friars Club case. Do you know what the Friars Club is? It's a club.
I know the Friars Club in New York, but
yeah, the original one is in L.A. and it was famous because the Rat Pack, Joey Bishop, Frank Sinatra. All of those guys, Sammy Davis, Dean Martin, were all members. And it was run by Mickey Cohen, who's the mafia chief, and Johnny Roselli, who was...
Roselli was the Cuba guy.
He was the liaison.
Yeah.
And so...
we need the red string.
They have a lawyer.
And the wall full of pictures.
Their lawyer, or Mickey Cohen's lawyer... shows up.
Mickey Cohen is Alcatraz, right? He's the guy.
Mickey Cohen is the mafia boss in
L.A. Yeah, they've been in a bunch of movies. Yeah. Okay, wow.
And the lawyer has been indicted because in the Friars Club, it turns out that the mafia had secret.
Recording.
They had a television camera. They had cameras on the roof of the Friars Club, and they were looking at everybody's cards and fixing the games. And then it's a famous trial that took many weeks in LA. In that trial, it comes out that the defense, the mob lawyers, had obtained the grand jury testimony, which is completely illegal. You go to jail for a long time for that. This attorney was charged with that. He's under a lot of stress. He's trying the case for the mafia that he doesn't want to lose. And he's charged with stealing the grand jury testimony. And he somehow finds time to show up and represent Sirhan. So he goes, so he's Sirhan's lawyer.
So you think...
And he tells Sirhan, you got to plead guilty. And then he buries all of the forensic evidence, all the ballistic evidence, which if there's no way Sirhan could have been convicted because the bullets that were in my father did not match the bullets that were in other people. They didn't come from the same
Also,
gun.
13 shots fired. Sirhan's gun only holds 8.
Exactly.
So we know that it's not like he's reloading.
And there's recordings, there's audios of it, of the 13 shots.
Wow. So this
anyway, it's a lot of circumstantial evidence. It's not the kind of evidence that we...
I think that's solid.
It is
but
circumstantial.
You said with your uncle,
with my uncle, it's just black and white. But with my father, it's circumstantial. So you cannot definitively say, but you can say there's a lot of... there's a lot of...
Wait, why is it so black and white with your uncle?
I hate to move...
Oh, you know what? It would take me 3 days to go through the evidence, to even give you the tip of the iceberg. People who are genuinely curious about my uncle's assassination, the CIA involvement, should read a book. There are many books, but I think the best one is a book called The Unspeakable by Jim Douglas. And what he's done is he's taken this mountain of evidence and he's distilled it all, and it's riveting. It's very, very easy to read, and it's really fascinating. And I think it's impossible to read that book and come away without thinking that the CIA killed JFK.
Okay.